comes from the Arizona Inn, a four-diamond, family-owned historic resort hotel and restaurant on Elm Street near the U of A. Information is at arizonainn.com.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tucson Weekly editor Jim Ninsel, and we're here to talk ZonaPolitics. Joining me today is State Senator Steve Farley of Tucson, a Democrat who wants to take on Governor Doug Ducey next year. Senator Farley, welcome to ZonaPolitics.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, why are you running for governor?
Well, 11 years in the minority in the Arizona legislature certainly puts fire in your belly. So that's given me the stamina to go ahead and do this. But primarily, it's my position as being the father of two daughters for the last 23 years. In that position, particularly the last 4 years, watching my youngest daughter go through Tucson High. She graduated number 18 in a class of 755, so I'm very proud of her. But watching the effects of these cuts on our public school system over that time, at Tucson High, there are 3,200 kids and 6 counselors. They have about a third of the computers they need, and the average age is 12 years old. There's the average median salary for folks there, for the teachers, is $38,000 for 8 years of education and experience, for a master's degree and 8 years of experience. That's not the way we treat our teachers, particularly because they're the only thing that's really working right now in our system. The dedication of the teachers is why my daughter got a great education at Tucson High. When you're last in the country in average salary, 50th in the country, and 44% of your teachers are leaving after 2 years because of that, then you've got a crisis on your hands, and all Governor Ducey wants to do to solve it is a 0.4% raise and more tax cuts. That's not going to cut it in the state of Arizona.
So how do you go about fixing this?
Well, we actually have the money. And that's something that I know because I've spent my time in the Senate on the Appropriations Committee. I've been ranking member on the Finance Committee and in the House Ways and Means Committee my entire 11 years there. I know how the budget works. I know how the money comes in, where the money goes to, where it doesn't go to. And I know that there are so many loopholes in our sales tax code. We have a $9.5 billion state budget annually, approximately at this point. And we give away $13.7 billion in loopholes every single year, 331 of them. Things like if you buy a 3-inch pipe, you pay sales tax. If you buy a 4-inch pipe, you don't. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense to people unless you're a corporation who buys a lot of 4-inch pipe in Arizona. There is one of those. It's named Southwest Gas, and we all pay Southwest Gas quite a lot of money every month so that they can hire lobbyists to go to the legislature and get themselves breaks. That break alone has hemorrhaged $90 million from the general fund over the last 10 years. And there are 330 loopholes that have been placed in there over time.
These are sales tax loopholes?
Sales tax loopholes alone. That doesn't even count the $4 billion annually we've given away in corporate tax cuts since 1996.
And when you're talking about the sales tax loopholes, are these just products, or are you talking about services as well that aren't currently taxed in Arizona?
These are products that I'm talking about. The service is a whole other thing that may want to be examined at some point, but which I don't think we need to examine at this point. And we don't need to get rid of all $13.7 billion. One of them is we don't charge sales tax on groceries. I don't think we should add sales tax on groceries. I don't think we should add sales tax on medical supplies. But I think if we could get rid of $3 billion worth of those, out of $13.7 billion is only the amount we know of how much it loses to the state. That's only about half of the overall number of tax loopholes. But if we could find $3 billion out of that $13.7 billion and eliminate those, we could lower the overall tax rate by a full % while increasing education spending by $2 billion a year. That's the type of leadership that I would bring to the governor's office to actually make that happen, because I know it isn't just Democrats that would like to do this. Republicans don't like an unlevel playing field either. And I've actually worked with Republicans in the legislature, Tea Party Republicans, to force review of all 331 of these loopholes at least once every 10 years. And I got that bill with a co-sponsor. It was David Farnsworth, very conservative Tea Partier from East Mesa. And he was the co-sponsor. We were able to get that out of the Senate 28-2. That's a huge majority with a whole bunch of conservatives on board too. I know there's the capability of us working together across the aisle in order to do significant things like this. And that's one of the things I will use my knowledge of the legislative process as governor to carry out.
So you mentioned teacher pay, obviously some element of education.
Yeah.
This last year, you actually had legislation that allowed teachers to you reduced or eliminated the accreditation process
Right.
for teachers, provided the school districts are okay with that. Does that help with our teacher shortage?
When you have 44% of teachers leaving within 2 years, and the reason they're leaving is because they can't afford to teach for the salary they're getting here in Arizona, and they're being poached from other states to go and teach there, you're not going to solve that problem by allowing more people in without any training. I haven't heard anybody say that what we need here to improve public schools in Arizona is less training. When you go into a classroom and you don't have the ability to manage a classroom, the chances are, if you've got no experience and they let you in that classroom, you'll be gone within 6 months at tops, because it's a challenging career. When you go in there and see what they have to deal with every day and trying to get across what they need to get across to students, some of whom are dealing with problems that are outside the classroom, you realize what a difficult job this is, but how incredibly vital. Because right now, 1 in 4 children in Arizona live in poverty. And public education is the best tool we've ever invented to allow people to lift themselves from poverty. So if we don't pay the teachers enough that they'll stay, we don't have a foundation for our education system. And we have to work on that right now.
You were also opposed to the voucher legislation that passed and is currently on hold, thanks to a referendum effort that is being challenged in court. We'll see where that goes. But your thoughts on why you thought that voucher plan was a bad idea?
Well, first, I'm really proud of those parents and teachers who volunteered to go out and get those petition signatures, getting 111,000 in 4 months. No one really thought they could do it, and they went out and did it incredibly well. And in exchange, they're victims of character assassination from lawyers hired by the Koch brothers. That's not what they deserve. They deserve to be listened to, as do all the 111,000 people who signed those petitions. Private school vouchers simply take money away from neighborhood public district schools and give them to a school that already would have the student going there, presuming the parent can afford the extra $10,000 to $15,000 a year to go there. It's literally stealing from the poor and giving to the rich. It's not what we need to have in a school system that's already had 21% cuts since 2008.
You've mentioned you've been in the minority for 11 years at the Arizona legislature. If you were to win the governor's office, you'd probably still be dealing with a Republican legislature. Do you see it more as you'd be playing defense and stopping the bad bills from being passed, or do you think you could actually get these guys to work with an agenda that you develop?
Well, first off, I want to challenge your assumption a little bit, because the climate out there right now with Trump in the White House is like nothing I've ever seen in terms of energy from the activists. Ever since November, we've tripled the number of Democratic Precinct Committee people on the ground at the doors in Arizona for the Democratic Party. That means that for every person that was volunteering last cycle, we have another 2 volunteering this cycle. And they're already showing up in meetings in huge numbers, because I've gone to legislative district meetings all over the state in my run for governor. It's amazing when you see that energy. I think that this is the cycle where Democrats don't just win the governor's office. I think we also win the Senate majority and we come close in the House.
But you thought that last time.
I thought that last time, but last time we still had a Democrat in the White House. Remember the last time we elected a Democratic governor is when we had a Republican in the White House. And I never thought I'd see a president worse than George W. Bush, but I think we found one. And he's basically been the Democratic organizer-in-chief since we've been there. But even if we do have Republicans in the House and the Senate still in charge, I've been able to work with folks really well. In fact, I was one of the people that Jan Brewer came to back in 2013 when she decided she wanted to expand Medicaid to 400,000 people in poverty and give health care to those folks and help our hospitals who are really struggling under the cost of unreimbursed care become healthy again. And we were able to do that, and that was a huge victory to be able to work across the aisle and do significant policy. I know folks, not only do I know the process, I know the people in the legislature really well on both sides. And I have really good relationships with folks who are Democrats and Republicans. So I think that we would enter a new era of, it would be a pragmatic policymaking as opposed to ideological policymaking. And that would come from a Democratic governor who wants to work on things that make a difference for everybody, not just for my own party. That's something we haven't seen for a long time. And with my knowledge of the process, I think that we would be able to move these things forward. And once even Republicans see that type of governance, I think they're going to want to have more. So we could be entering a new era of pragmatic democratic governance in Arizona after this election.
Now, as you mentioned that there's a lot more energy out there for Democrats, and people are fired up as a result of this Trump thing. But it has been a long dry spell for Democrats on the statewide level in Arizona in recent years. And so, what makes you think you're the guy to turn the tide?
Well, I'm the guy who will be able to be ready on day one once I am elected. But I also have won 6 elections in a row. When my Senate race was in a new district, I had 2/3 of the people there had never voted for me before, and it was a pretty evenly matched district. I went out there and won by 11 points in that district by knocking on every door that I could find from April through November. I've got the energy and the determination to be able to pull this thing off. I have the ability to fundraise, and I'm spending a lot of time doing that, losing muscle tone on the phone, asking people for money. But that's part of what it takes when you're running against the Koch brothers' golden boy. And I really think that the climate out there has changed how people are looking at what they want. In this country, we need somebody who can bring people together, and in this state, that people want that as well. Bring people together, create policies that aren't based on ideology, but are based on things we actually need to grow our economy, fund our transportation system. When you look at what I've done in Tucson, and how I've worked with folks on the other side of previous transportation initiatives to create the Regional Transportation Authority and then win for the first time in 4 decades of trying. The streetcar, how that's transformed downtown, and how I was able to come up with that idea back in 2001 and then continue pushing to make that happen. I have a lot of support from Republicans and Democrats alike in these efforts that I've done, and I think we can bring that type of pragmatic policymaking to the state level. People are done with the spectacle in D.C. They're ready for just sort of grown-ups in charge here in the state. And I think that's about the time that we have that in Arizona. We live in an amazing state. That's why we love the climate, the culture, the food, everything about this place, except for the leadership. It's been so poor. But I really believe that we could be a light unto the nation in pushing forward new creative policy ideas instead of a joke on late-night television.
You mentioned fundraising. You're on the phone fundraising. Do you
am.
think you can match what Doug Ducey can raise and put in through his own pockets if it comes to that?
Well, no one's going to match the Koch brothers, and it's been clear that he is one of their creations. He goes to their conference in Palm Springs and tells them how much he owes them. I would rather have a governor owe the people who elected him into office than a few out-of-state billionaires who paid for his campaign. I'm not going to be able to get as much money as they will, but I'm going to be able to compete. I have no doubt with that. He may have a few billionaires on his side, but I've got a whole lot of people with a little less money each, and we're going to be able to compete toe-to-toe with them. On top of that, I know that they're going to ultimately pay for a bunch of ugly TV ads lying about me. Millions of dollars they'll spend. But if you go out and meet people, and I've been going all over the state, meeting everyone I can in every corner, getting endorsements all over the place, from Sheriff Tony Estrada in Santa Cruz County to Sheriff Casey Clark in Navajo County, and all sorts of city council members, supervisors, local elected officials, legislators. And when you have that level of support and you meet people and they tell their friends and neighbors and family, there's hope for Arizona, this guy's running and he's different from what you've seen before, people will believe their friends and neighbors. They won't believe the ugly lies on television. That's what I'm really gambling on in this case. I think people will trust what's in front of them, and I think people are ready for change.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, but State Senator Steve Farley running for governor next year. Thank you so much for joining us here on Zona Politics.
Great to be here. Thank you so much, Jim.
All right, and we will be right back with Brian Sanders from the American Babylon website.
Zona Politics is made possible with the generous support of the Loft Cinema, Tucson's independent movie theater. The Loft features independent foreign and documentary films, cult classics, discussions with filmmakers, and much more, including the Loft Film Fest in November. The Loft is located at 3233 East Speedway Boulevard. Showtimes can be found at loftcinema.org. Support for Zona Politics is provided by Hotel Congress in historic downtown Tucson. More information at hotelcongress.com and 622-8848. The Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce serves the business community in the bilingual, bicultural region of the Arizona-Sonora border and is a proud media partner with Zona Politics. Learn more at TucsonHispanicChamber.org.
These young people from the community come together, actually get up and do something.
We can do anything!
I think we've attracted a lot of people that are super passionate.
We're here at the No Ban, No Wall.
If you come out of college, you have this experience, you know how things run, you have a huge leg up.
People who have ideas and who are dreamers, you know what I mean, who really want to get themselves out there. I think that they should come here.
My next guest is Brian Sanders, a lone wolf journalist and the man behind the American Babylon website, where he's been documenting politics in the age of Trump. Brian, welcome to Zona Politics.
Jim, glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, who is Brian Sanders and what is American Babylon?
You probably saw the footage of me getting punched at a Donald Trump rally last March, and since then I've been following the Trump circus as it makes its way into the heartland of American politics.
And what got you going to that Trump rally in the first place?
I've always had a special place in my heart for American con men, and it seemed to me that this was the first one who had a remote possibility of becoming president, and I was right.
And what is the American Babylon website?
This is new journalism. This is frontline journalism, no corporate sponsorships, absolutely no filter between you and what you want to see, which is what's happening. So, what American Babylon does is go to where things are happening and show you what we see. There is absolutely no filter between us and the world. The fake news hashtag, if it applies to us, is our own problem and not one of corporate sponsorship, or I might add, George Soros sponsorship.
And so talk a little bit about what you've done so far with the project.
We went to a dozen or so Trump rallies, some other rallies thrown in there, Hillary in Phoenix, Bernie in Tucson, Michelle in Phoenix or someplace. Basically following the circus in the sense that, last year's election was totally insane, and you got that idea from talking to people that were well versed in this. If you talk to journalists, they had no idea what they were seeing last year either. So it was really a chance to get down into the muck with people that supported Trump. I don't support Donald Trump. I don't make any bones about that. I think he's not an ideal president in 1,000 different ways. But I also don't want to turn off to the force that brings him. It's not enough for us to sit here and say, well, Trump's horrible, he's a thief, he should be impeached. The question is, why? Why is there a whole nother side of America, 20%, 30% of the country, whatever you say, that does support him, that fervently supports him, that wants him to succeed, quote unquote, whatever that means for them.
And when you're talking to a lot of these people, what sort of things are they saying to you about why they like Donald Trump?
Well, we live in a country that is not bifurcated into two slices. It's been completely shattered. And Donald Trump is a helium balloon that people fill up with their particular, style of hate or their particular thing that they want to put forward. So you have people that are really into Trump who are big into conspiracy theories. This is the first conspiracy theorist president. There's no doubt about that. You have people that are really into Trump who simply don't want any more immigration, and this has become a big issue in the last couple of weeks. Trump's main issue that he won on was absolutely immigration. It was build that wall. It was no amnesty. It was kick them out. That was the thing that animated. So if you talk to people at Trump rallies, there's going to be one particular thing that animates them, and then on top of that is the immigration issue. There's no doubt that Trump supporters are insistent that the wall be built and that everyone who doesn't look like them be kicked out of the country immediately.
That's the foreign invasion force, as they might put it.
Yeah, well, we saw it in Brexit, right? What was the advertising with Brexit? It was this foreign horde that is coming to break down the walls and steal your money via welfare programs. that same advertising was very effective here, and it's very effective everywhere you look. There's no question that Trump played on an animus that has been latent in American politics for a long time, and using the fake news hashtag, which is without a doubt the most powerful hashtag, the most powerful meme in American politics for, since I've been watching American politics. Fake news exploded what people expect and what they see when they watch their news. I talked to a guy up in Phoenix at the Phoenix rally that, was kind of a circus unto itself a couple weeks ago. I asked this guy, button down, Scottsdale guy, nice guy, 60, 65 years old, golf player, Cadillac driver, kind of the guy we're talking about. I said, look, are you telling me that when you watch CNN that you see fake, everything is a lie? They're simply making up everything they tell you. He thought about it. He said, yeah, I do. And I said, well, is that new? Is that something that Trump brought to you? He said, no, it's been latent. It's been there. We've had this theory on the right that the news is a liberal web of influence and intrigue for a long time. And the fake news hashtag, the way that Trump employed it, was the most brilliant kill shot that we're going to find in American politics. There's no doubt about it.
He also seems to have thrown away the dog whistle and just is outright saying things that were always sort of subtext of some Republican politicians.
Yeah, well, I find it really amazing the lengths that people go. They twist themselves into these things saying, well, I don't think that Donald Trump personally is a racist. He might be dog whistling to get elected, etc. That notion, you can disabuse yourself of that if you just look at what he and his family have done and said for 50, 60 years, going back to Fred Trump, his father, one of the original slumlords in New York. And this is not me just saying this. These are facts that were brought out in federal court. So it is amazing that people don't want to take Donald Trump at face value. And
you went to the GOP convention
that's true.
Last year, and what were your takeaways from that?
Number one thing you saw at the GOP convention was the same thing you saw at the Democratic convention. It was the phrase, lock her up. That shocks people. That in Cleveland at the Democratic convention, or I'm sorry, at the Republican convention in Cleveland, obviously you would expect they were saying, lock her up, Hillary's a crook. At the Democratic convention in Philadelphia, you saw the same thing. And this is probably why Hillary ended up losing the election, was that even at the locus of Democratic political power during an election year, presidential election year, her, the people that you would expect to be supporting her were sitting there aping the chant to lock her up that you found at the Republican convention.
And you have a new project coming up along the border. Talk a little bit about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so that's called 1,989 miles, and that's the length of the U.S. border with Mexico. It's 1,989 miles. Well, we're going to drive from South Padre Island, we being my partner in crime, Jimmy Giannotti, the photographer. American Babylon is bootstrapped, media that has nothing behind it except for our willpower. And what we're going to do is go down to South Padre Island, drive from there to San Diego, the whole length of the 1,989 miles, and show you what we see. Simple as that.
And how can people help with that?
They can go to GoFundMe.com/1989 miles, GoFundMe/1989 miles. You can give us some money there. If you don't have any money, give us a like, give us a share. I don't want anybody who's hurting for a cup of coffee to give us money. The idea is that, we don't need much to make this happen, but if we do make it happen, then we all get a glimpse of what it smells like, tastes like, and feels like to actually be on the border. The Dreamers, which has become a big thing in the last whatever amount of months, that's a group of people that's 800,000 strong. So if you actually look at the United States population, the Dreamers themselves are a state that's bigger than 4 states in the Union. It's like Alaska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming. Well, we have a real problem in our hands if we have a president who wants to remove a whole state worth of people. And I think when you look at that issue, and there's a lot of mystery there of what is actually being talked about, and then you look all along the border, you have a whole bunch of political obfuscation, talk, very little information. Very few people in DC, very few people outside of the border area know anything about what's going on the border. And it's a very dangerous situation to get into if we're making policy and allowing people to make policy for us based on no information and based on outright falsehoods and racist lies that have been propagated about Mexicans for generations.
And if folks want to see the work you're doing online, where do they go? Facebook.com/AmericanBabylon, AmericanBabylon.net. Any of those places, we're always there. Facebook's always the best and the fastest way to go. And if you want to get involved with what we're doing, simply look it up. There is no filter, and we don't ask you to pay anything for it. It's free to you. If you can help us out, fantastic. If not, just come and see what we're doing. See that, you know, the idea that CNN is fake news itself is fake news. But each and every one of us determines our own level of involvement. We can go to a rally, we can go to the border, we can pull out our phone and show exactly what we're seeing. In a lot of ways, what we're doing is taking that to a level of sincerity and temerity that maybe people hopefully will look at. But that's our idea. All right. Well, Brian Sanders, thanks for coming down, talking about what you got going on with American Babylon. And I think we have actually a clip here of your project on the border, and let's take a look at that.
Fantastic.
That it's
That's our show for today. My thanks to our media partners at Tucson Weekly, Tucson Local Media, Creative Tucson, and Community Radio KXCI 91.3 FM, where you can hear a radio version at 5 p.m. on Sunday afternoons. If you missed any part of today's show, you can find our episodes at ZonaPolitics.com, and be sure to follow us on Facebook. I'm Jim Ninsel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Zona Politics is hosted by Tucson Weekly senior writer Jim Ninsel. The program is produced by Jennifer Powers Murphy and Danny Vinnick and edited by Jim Rundle. Special thanks to KXCI, Tucson Weekly, Brink Creative Digital, and all supporters who provide crucial funding for the program. Learn more about Zona Politics at ZonaPolitics.com, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter.